Hello, listeners and readers of AwardsWatch.com. This is Executive Editor Ryan McQuaid, and here's my wide-ranging conversation with Emmy nominee Adam Scott, where we chatted about his celebrated work on the hit Apple TV series Severance, alongside his favorite flavor of Gatorade and his love of the Twilight Zone and the Fast and Furious franchise, which he clearly knows more than I did, as I screwed up the details of the 9th and 10th installment of the action franchise within our talk. My apologies to Adam Scott and Jason Momoa. Scott has been nominated for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series, as well as Best Drama Series as an executive producer for the show. Without further delay, enjoy my interview with Adam Scott. Well, first of all, once again, Adam, thank you for taking some time with me here today to talk about this and your work in here, which I think is the television performance of the year. And
thanks, Ryan. That's so nice of you to say.
I recently learned that you grew up a massive fan of the Twilight Zone.
Oh, yeah.
And for myself, I grew up a massive fan of Lost. And
sure. Me too.
I think for a lot of people, Severance is going to be that for them for this generation.
Wow,
And
you know what? Sorry, go ahead.
no, but I was going to ask you, what is it about a show like Severance and those other shows
Yeah.
that you think makes audiences become so addictive in attaching themselves to every word characters say week to week, and make a dialogue where people are wanting to talk about a show constantly until the next episode drops or even the next season? Because for this case, it was like 3 years in between you could talk about all this.
Well, first of all, when you said that, I had never really put that together before, and to think that our show could be that for people, like inspire people's imaginations like Twilight Zone did for me and Lost. But for me, my adolescence, having the Twilight Zone, just because they played it, all I did was watch television, and I watched TV on a 5-inch black and white TV that I just had in my bedroom. And it was mine. You know, it was kind of a solitary experience, like watching an iPad or phone is now. But I loved it because I could just hole away in my bedroom and I would watch everything. And then at 11 p.m., after primetime TV, instead of watching the news as a 12-year-old, I could watch the Twilight Zone that would hold me over until the Tonight Show started at 11:30, and then Letterman. So every night I got a brand new Twilight Zone, and I got to run through the entire series over a period of a summer. And the thing that Twilight Zone did for me is really triggered my imagination with its stories. But I think that my way into all of those stories, first and foremost, and it's the brilliance of Rod Serling, is the characters. He was able to, in just half an hour, those episodes were a half hour. So back then it was roughly about 25 minutes. Now it's what, 21 minutes and a half hour network show. I think it was a few minutes longer back then, but he was able to have these full character arcs, and you just get hooked in. Like when you think about Burgess Meredith as the librarian and William Shatner on the airplane, these people that you really hook into. And I think that was also the brilliance of Lost, were these incredible characters. Like from episode 1, you just wanted to know, like, if those characters weren't there, if Kate and Jack weren't interesting characters that you deeply cared about, nothing else would have mattered. We wouldn't have been hooked into any of that. I think that's what Damon and J.J. Abrams and that whole group really knew. Those writers, is that it's all about the characters, and I think that's also Severance and what Dan and Ben are always thinking. All of us are thinking. It's always character first, and the show is largely character driven.
For sure. And then that's when the theories come and the endless questions. And for yourself, I am curious. There was the 3-year gap between the seasons for audiences, and we were all like, for the love of God, give us this television show.
I know. Sorry.
But for yourself, what was that experience like waiting for the scripts, and did you know within that time frame what Mark's journey was going to already be for season two? And within that, did you know that you were going to have to be running basically this entire season? I felt like
Oh my
from the
God.
beginning of it, literally to the end, we see you running,
I
and
know.
it just feels like you had a lot more to do this season, even though you had a lot to do in season one. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, just from yourself, the 3 year gap, what that was like for you, and then just the new challenges this season presented.
Well, the 3 year gap largely was due to us being one of many shows that was shooting in the midst of the strike. We were rounding the corner for finishing our season when the strike kicked in, and I think we had 3 or 4 episodes left to do, and already, lengthy shooting process. I believe we shot for 186 days, which is a lot. Um, and so that really is largely what happened there with the and we got started late. Where the season one came out, and we got picked up for season two after season one had already been out in the world, so couldn't really get started in earnest until midway through 2022, I believe, is when season one came out, or spring of 2022. Anyway, I think that, yeah, for season two, I'm lucky enough to be a producer on the show, so I get to sort of be there and see how things are being developed, and where the characters are going in one way or another. So as far as the scripts and knowing where Mark is going, where the story is going, where all the characters are going, yeah, I get to be there and see what's coming for me and for everybody. It's really exciting.
Was shooting those running sequences as challenging as they look from the technical eye?
Well, that opening sequence at the
Hmm.
beginning, in episode one, it
Hmm.
opens with Mark jumping out of the elevator and just running. That was in that one sequence took 7 months. It was, I mean, we're shooting other stuff, but we keep going back and shooting little bits and pieces. I mean, it's me on a treadmill, hooked into a harness, surrounded by green screen with the camera on a robot arm kind of circling me. Uh, they were all different. It was like a bunch of different sequences all melded into one. Ben and Jessica and special effects team really put together an incredible sequence, but it took a while to piece it all together. And so I would know when someone approached me asking me what my favorite color of Gatorade was, I knew the next day we were going to be doing some running. Um, and that went on and on for 7 months. Every week or so, we would shoot something for it. So we had our own little wrap party when we finally finished that running sequence. But then at the end of the show, Britt and I are running around too. There's just, like you said, uh, an inordinate amount of running in season two.
I mean, you brought it up, but I have to ask you, what is your favorite flavor of Gatorade, Adam?
The original, the kind of greenish yellow,
Okay,
kind of old
like the
school,
classic, the
the
classic.
classic.
Okay,
There are a couple of flavors that I can't abide, but that's
you
tried and
can
true.
you can say it right now. Like, which ones are you against?
Well, I'm not against them because I know everybody has
Yes,
their favorite color slash flavor, but there's a cucumber one I had recently that, well, I think
like lime
the issue,
cucumber is what it is, right?
is that what it is?
Yeah, my father-in-law drinks that one.
Okay.
And
See,
I don't understand it either.
it's someone's favorite, not mine,
Yeah.
but I like the old. Actually, Gatorade sent me. I wish I had it nearby. They sent me a special Severance bottle of Gatorade,
Oh man.
um, because I did drink, and also bananas. I needed potassium because I'm not joking. My muscles would start to cramp from these running shots, and we had to keep going.
Mhm.
So I would have to stop and drink Gatorade and eat bananas. I did not train for season 2 of Severance, which I probably should have, I guess.
I love that. I love that. Getting into Mark as a character,
Yeah,
the sort of differences between, I think he is one person, but you're creating two versions of him. This Innie Mark and Outie Mark.
yeah,
And I think that the great actors like yourself, they always have the differences when they play multiple characters, like facial expressions, the way they walk, hand gestures, certain things that they do with their face, or also even reading of lines. So for yourself, when you're making those multiple choices because of what the show is there like a dance of creating possibly too many choices because of the fact that you don't want the audience to be tipped a certain way, or because of their particular places where Mark is in the outer world and any Mark is inside of, of work, that you can't really make too many drastic changes to the character? How do you find making those decisions for both of them to be distinct individuals?
yeah. It's a good question because that was what the thought process we were going through when we started making the show in 2020, which was, you know, um, it was because as an actor, you get a opportunity like this to play, for lack, essentially two different characters, and the instinct of an actor, myself included, would be, I want one of them to have a limp, and the other one to have a mustache. You go into these places of very actory places, but when we really kind of got down to it, it was really important to me and to Ben and to Dan that this feel like the same guy, because it is the same guy. It's just different sections or halves of the same guy. So it it came down to figuring out physiologically what they had in common and then going from there. And I think their differences ended up being all sprouting from life experience, and their differences in life experience, and the fact that Audi Mark has had a very full, 40 some odd years of sorrow and happiness and all of the things that go into a full complicated life, love, hate, all of that stuff, travel, all of those ingredients. Any Mark is, for all intents and purposes, like 2.5 years old, and his entire world is these walls that he's, that have been surrounding him, and Cobell and his, Dylan and Petey and Irving. That's his entire world. And so, not just worldview, but how that affects you physically, how that affects the way you speak, and you kind of general outlook, and how that would end up affecting you physically. That's sort of where how we sort of discovered the differences.
I think the theme of this season, as I was reading others and other conversations with you
Yeah.
and with Dan Erickson and Ben, the theme of this seems to be from almost at least any Mark and everybody that's playing in any character from their childhood almost to their teens, adolescence, and they're sort
Mm-hmm.
of growing up. And within that, there is this shattering of trust, right, in
Yeah.
institutions. And
Mm-hmm.
I think for Mark, especially, both are dealing with trust. And one on the outside has to gain the trust back in of the reintegration process, with also with Kobo as well, of trusting that this whole thing is going to work to get his wife back.
Yeah.
There's also any Mark struggling with the trust of the institution that he was very attached to, his relationship with Mr. Milchin, the trust of literally his colleagues, because
Mm-hmm.
they might be somebody else. Could you talk a little bit about just how both of them are facing trust and are being manipulated and emotionally and even physically abused by this company, and what that says about the theme of this season and what he's going through?
Yeah, I think that season one was, for any Mark, was largely about disillusionment, and disillusionment in this particular institution, but also disillusionment with his for all intents and purposes, mother, Cobell, and father, and everything. She's sort of the sun and the moon as far as he's concerned. And coming to a place through Helly, that sort of sparking this moment of questioning his surroundings and questioning everything he knows, right? So that ball gets rolling late in season one, and they take a pretty drastic measure at the end of that season. So season two ends up being about, like you said, their adolescence, their teenage years in a sense, and their rebelliousness. It's really rebelling against the system as they know it. Um, and, I think that uh, the season also starts out with Innie and Outie Mark aligned and in a very real way, um, being both emotionally and physically aligned. They need to get Gemma out. Um, Innie Mark, the Innies have this strange relationship with their outies. It's almost there's like almost idolatry. It's almost like their outies are celebrities or something. They have this this sort of awe uh, uh, that, that they feel with their outies, and so Innie Mark really wants to help his outie because there is a grave injustice that's happening here, and he's right. But then as the season goes on, and Innie Mark's kind of rebelliousness and disillusionment really ends up growing, and his feelings start growing, both about his surroundings, but also for Helly, that eventually Innie Mark and Outie Mark get set on a collision course with each other, and their interests start to divert from one another. So, uh, so yeah, it was largely about constructing the season so that path could start, and then the divergence has to happen, and then they have to crash into one another, um, by the end. And Innie Mark does end up helping his outie out to a certain extent, um, but he also ends up having to look out for himself a bit too, and he makes a somewhat rebellious, but also somewhat self-preserving decision at the end.
Yeah. We'll get to that scene in a
Oh,
minute. I
sure.
know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
But there is something like you were mentioning, there is something that does connect them, and that is these dueling relationships that they have with the two significant people that they love. Mark is
Yeah.
split to love both Heliar and his wife Gemma, and that's where Britt and Deacon come in. And so I was curious about what was it like working with both of them and informing Mark's most important relationships, the women that he loves, and creating the chemistry of not just a long standing relationship in a short amount of time, like we see Mark and Gemma's full relationship and her storyline and that, but then also continuing the relationship from season one that any Mark has with Heliar and the evolution of the significant moments for them. Because for both of them during this season, they have such important moments and for us as the audience to connect with. So I'm really curious about crafting those moments with these two other extraordinary actors as well throughout the
Yeah.
season.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm just lucky I get to work with Britt and Deacon. They're both incredible. And um, I know when we're going to shoot those scenes, which are all incredibly important, um, for the story. Those moments at the end of the season, when everything comes to a head, those moments don't work if those relationships aren't interesting or resonant emotionally. They really have to work. And so, they're beautifully written, but like you said, then you have to step in and play it and hope that it clicks. And I'm so lucky that I got to do it with these incredible actors. Uh, Britt and I really work great together. I love whenever we have a scene. I'm always excited because I know it's going to be fun and interesting, but also it's going to be something. It's going to end up being something completely different than what I expected when I first read it, because there's just something that happens when it's the two of us and we start going on a scene, um, and it just evolves and becomes its own thing. It's that sort of magic thing that happens um, when two actors kind of click and it just works. And she's so good and so tuned in to that character that I know that um, I need to prepare, but I also know that I need to leave plenty of room for the kind of moment to take us wherever it ends up going. And that doesn't mean changing dialogue or anything. That just means the scene is going to become its own sort of living thing. So it's always exciting doing anything, doing any scene with Britt and Deachin. Uh, it's much the same because, but different because with Deachin and with Mark and Gemma, we hadn't spent any time with them. Mark and Helly had all of this real estate through season one and season two. We got to see them meet and fall in love and all the whole thing with Mark and Gemma. It's all been kind of referred to. We hadn't been able to really dig in and see it as an audience, but also us as actors. We didn't know what exactly which form this would take, and it was really important again for those last moments of the season to work. Deachin had this episode 7, to show the world who Gemma is, and what she did was incredible. In a very small plot of real estate, was able to create this full person, and everybody just fell in love with Gemma. She's this kind of vivacious, interesting person, and you see now why Audi Mark is such a shell, because he needed Gemma to complete him and to show him sort of how to be a person in a sense. Like she made him whole out there. Um, so it kind of made a lot of things kind of clicked into place. A lot of like puzzle pieces. When you have puzzle pieces on the board that are just kind of resting on top of where they're supposed to go. It really kind of, Deachin's performance and what she did in that episode really kind of pressed those pieces into place.
I love that. You talk about the collision course earlier. I have to talk about the scene of the year, I think, in all of television, which is the dual camcorder sequence that you have.
Oh yeah.
And I wanted to talk about two parts of it. One, I wanted to talk about the technical aspect of it,
Yeah.
shooting that with Ben, how you kind of wanted to convey that. Again, that goes back to choices, because then that's where the lines really get blurred as to
Yeah.
which Mark is there. That's got to be, I would assume then decisions and conversations you have, not just with Ben, but what's on the page. But then the other thing is about perspective and perception, and the fact that you have to play a guy here that is fighting on both sides for the thing that they love the most, and are hoping and trusting in the other to let the other one have that fairy tale ending as well. So for
Yeah.
yourself as an actor, what was it like playing that emotional complexity for both marks that we've seen happen throughout the season finally coming to a head?
Yeah. It was really hard,
I could
if I'm
assume.
gonna be
I could assume.
frank.
Yeah.
It was hard, but that's why it was so fun and why it was uh so interesting, and because it was hard. I mean, it's sort of the show. It's this big challenge. We're both seasons at the beginning, we're at the bottom of this enormous mountain, and we just have to, uh, we have to climb up, and it's that climb, it's that process of making it that is so fun and so challenging. And again, that's why I love it. And that's why this scene was something I was kind of dreading all season because, you know, it's that thing you dream of as an actor that you're going to get an opportunity like this to have a scene like this, but then it's there and it's just like, oh my God, okay, how are we going to do? How am I going to do? Like, myriad opportunities to screw it up, to lean in too hard here or not do enough there. Um, and Dan was writing it right up to the last minute. It was shifting and changing because it's a really delicate thing. It's a delicate thing in every way. And the edit and Ben's directing it and Dan in writing in me playing it. It's because a scene like that could be corny. It could, you know, you lean in too hard one way or the other in any of those jobs. It could, uh, it could, it could just be thrown off balance, and as an audience, as a viewer, it could start to ring hollow or false or whatever. So for us, it was about figuring out how to make it a real conversation and how to have it be a real emotional exchange, um, without the sort of novelty of it taking over. Um, but I think it was important too to have a moment of the novelty of it playing for both of those guys because it is a crazy thing to see yourself talking just moments ago. And so we had to sort of open the scene with both of them sort of marveling at this thing that's happening to them. Um, and that was an interesting thing too in the writing of it is figuring out, is that going to be, because it could, if this was happening to me, it might be the entire conversation talking about how weird this is and what kind of shampoo do you use and like all that stuff. But I think it ended up being just right that there's just sort of a moment of it and then they get down to business because they have really important things to talk about. They can't just do that the whole time. So, technically it was a matter of I just recorded both sides of it in my apartment on my phone so I would have something to play off of when we shot it. Um, but it was a matter of just completely leaning on and depending on Ben, um, and his taste, uh, that I trust implicitly. We've been doing the show for a while now, so we have a great thing that we can click into when we're on set, and so I could just depend on him. And I didn't, because I felt in order to pull the scene off, I needed to completely kind of get rid of that inner critic or director or whatever you want to call it, and that you have as an actor that's kind of telling you when something sounds off or something doesn't work. And I just had to get rid of that and just completely depend on Ben and just try and do as many different versions as possible. So he and Jeff, Richmond, the editor, would have as many options as possible. So we did it just over and over again, and that's where I'm at my happiest is when we can just do it, you know, 30 times. Like I just love doing it over and over again. And this was a situation where we needed to do that because it was going to be a matter of calibrating. Since it's not a scene where there's two people and you can see the takes where it's really working, we needed to provide sort of this blanket of options for them to be able to choose from. And so it was a matter of doing that, uh, and doing it just as many times as possible.
Oh, I
It
love
ended
that.
up being really fun, just,
Yeah,
hard.
but it's also work. Yeah, to get there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's
Um,
good.
I I love the versatility in your career. I think from
Oh,
you being
thanks.
in a lot of dramatic work early on to then, hearing you talk recently about your transition to comedy and
Hmm.
now and how you were kind of scared a little bit about going into that because you hadn't gone into like the improv world before, and then
Yeah,
hearing Ben talk about like that you were perfect for this role but you hadn't done a lot of dramatic work in a while because
yeah.
of all your different successes. Are there tools and lessons that you learned from more of your dramatic work that helped you with your comedic work over time, and then vice versa, the comedic work that you've done over the last couple of years that helped you kind of get back into working on more dramatic roles like Big Little Lies or Severance? And then are there like lessons that you learned from people as well too? Like because you've worked with, you know, some of the greats like Adam McKay, Ben,
Yeah,
Martin Scorsese, in one of my
yeah.
favorite films, The Aviator. Like, are those lessons that you learned and then you take into a project like this? What's that process like for you?
Yeah, what really kind of the first thing that really blew my mind when I was stepping into the comedy world, and my first real experience with that was Step Brothers, and watching Adam McKay and Will Ferrell and John Riley and those guys. The thing that really just sort of blew my mind at first, and that I think was the most valuable thing I learned working on Step Brothers, was just the lack of preciousness that those guys have about what they're doing. I remember one day, I can't remember if it was, I think Adam McKay one day said, we're not putting up aluminum siding. We're making a movie. Like, this is fun. Like, let's go. So they have this kind of, which I saw as kind of anarchic at the time, which was just, let's do a couple takes where it's scripted, and then let's just screw around and have fun and improvise and see what happens. But the thing that the key to all of that that I really carried with me was, because up until then I had always kind of thought of being on a set and working on a movie or TV show as a really important like, you need to get it right. We gotta like zero in and get it right. Let's you can't screw up. But these guys were like, let's just see what happens. Let's throw a bunch of stuff against the wall. And the key to it is, if it doesn't work, who cares? We won't, we're not going to use that. We're going to use the things that work, that are funny, that make sense. We'll use the parts that are good and make the movie, but sometimes you can't find those parts that are good unless you try a bunch of other stuff. And that was kind of opened my mind up about the whole thing. And I was like, oh, right. Yeah. We don't, you can do stuff that maybe isn't good or doesn't work, but who cares? You just don't, you use it, you just use the good stuff. And so that sort of really freed me up and relaxed me going forward. Um, and just sort of reset my mind about this whole thing. That there's no reason to be precious about it. I think the key to the whole thing is just being as relaxed as possible. And it took me years and years to just sort of relax, because I was so enamored with the whole being on a set was what I dreamed about since I was 8 years old or something. So finally being in that environment, I was really tensed up and freaked out about it. But kind of watching those guys and how they work really helped relax me,
I love
which
that.
I think is important.
No, I love that. Um, I've read how much you've talked about your experiences on working on Party Down and Parks and Recreation, and how
Mm,
much you miss working with those people every day, and how
mm,
much you would jump at the opportunity to work with them again, and how much you love
yeah,
them. I mean,
yeah,
we saw you literally on Amy Poehler's podcast recently, and how great it
yeah,
was for all of us that love Park and Recs to see you guys together. It's always just
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
such a comforting thing. But when you're on a different journey, you kind of, I think you always look back on the other journeys that you had and juxtapose that a little bit to what you're on now. So for how has being on those life journeys of those television shows and those rides made you look at your current one with Severance? Does that make you cherish this, if not all aspects of this, as part of it? Because it's very rare for anyone to have one successful thing, let alone a career of wonderful, rich tapestry of work, and then have also then be the face of that now
Mm.
too, and have yourself in billboards and be on the posters and be the main character of this phenomena of show. So how have those experiences helped you with the overall experience of Severance so far?
Well, something that I'm really grateful for, that I wasn't particularly grateful for at the time, was how long it's taken me and how long it took me in my career to kind of find my footing a bit. And I really found my footing with the sort of trifecta of Step Brothers and Party Down and Parks and Rec. That was really this like 2 year period where I kind of figured out what I was doing and felt like I was good at something and could be of value to something, and felt like I'd found my people and felt comfortable. And so by the time I found that, I was 15 years in to my career. And so that's 15 years of not really finding your footing and not really knowing exactly what you're feeling like you're not quite getting there, and feeling frustrated career wise, certainly. But then when you're getting your opportunities and getting on sets and stuff, not quite knowing if what I was doing was working all of the time. Sometimes it would, but then sometimes it wouldn't. And that's still true today. I'm not trying to say that I've kind of figured it all out, but I think I could just sort of, it was starting to feel like it was clicking for me. And then my career started solidifying. So it was sort of clicking more than it ever had before. Um, so all that to say that by the time that started happening, I was 15 years in. So I didn't take any of it for granted. I felt incredibly lucky then working on Party Down with all of those incredible people and Parks with all of those incredible people. I knew how lucky I was. And I feel like on both of those shows, we all knew how lucky we were. We knew how special this combination of people were, and how great those shows were. Um, so I look back so fondly on that stuff because I remember all of it, because I wasn't coasting through it and punching my time card going in. I loved being there for all that stuff. And I feel similarly now with Severance, you know, being on a show that people are responding to in real time is incredibly special. Party Down, people discovered it mostly after it was canceled, and Parks and Rec, it wasn't like it was a huge hit while it was on. We were always on the verge of getting canceled. Um, and it's really, continued to have this incredible following, and people really discovered it during the pandemic and all of that. Um, and but to be on something that has sort of um, resonated in the culture like Severance has while we're in the midst of it is a brand new, really, really special thing. And our fans are incredibly smart, creative people. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is I haven't taken any of it for granted, because I've certainly been on the other end of of things that don't work or that are good, but no one discovers it, and it just sort of floats away into the ether. So 30 years in, I feel like I've sort of experienced a lot of different versions of what something can be, and so I know how special this moment is.
No, that's awesome. I'm going to let you go on one last thing, if I can,
Sure.
just have you indulge me. So, one of my favorite things you also do is not necessarily on television or on the big screen, but it is in podcast form. And it is when
Oh
you
man.
show up on how did this get made and talk
Oh
about the
yeah.
latest film within the Fast and Furious franchise.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious for yourself, what do you hope is in the new film whenever we get it? And did you have you seen the last one? Did you see Fast 10? Were you on the show for that
Yeah.
one? And
No, I wasn't. I was out of. I couldn't do it, but
okay.
yeah, I did see it for
What were
sure.
your thoughts on it?
I'm trying to remember which one that
With
is.
Jason
Um,
Momoa and
oh
like
yeah, 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 yeah.
and like they fake out that everyone's dead, but we
That's
all
right.
know that's not true because we
That's
know how
right.
movies work.
It's the
And
one after they went to space.
no, that's the one they went to space in towards the end.
Was this last one?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was. I thought nine was when they went to space, and 10 was Jason Momoa. Um, there. I love those movies for all of their bombast and they have a lot of guts
Hmm.
creatively. Temple of Doom is my favorite movie, so I like movies that are unafraid to get bigger and bigger and see how far they can push it. And I'm I feel like the last two Furious movies have sort of uh, blended into each other for me, just in my memory.
That's fair.
My kind of peak of Fast and Furious movies were the few before the last two.
Like
I
five,
felt
six,
like,
seven.
yeah,
Yeah.
eight too maybe.
Yeah.
Um, but the last two have been super fun. They're just in my mind that it's not quite as distinctive as the ones before, but I am first in line for any Fast and Furious movie. And Hobbs and Shaw was fantastic too.
Yeah. They're just good
Really fun.
escapism, right?
Oh yeah, and
Fun.
they're making something on a really grand scale that has a real sense of fun to it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the movies get that big and they get a little over serious because the stakes are so high and because it's such an expensive endeavor. But those movies really kind of keep their element of fun going.
No, I love it. Well, Adam, thank you so much for talking with me here today. I love your performance in the show.
Thank you,
And I've
Ryan.
loved your work throughout your career, and I cannot wait. And I know everybody else can't wait for season 3. I know you guys are working on it. I'm not going to ask you any questions on that. I kind of do like a no spoiler kind of thing. I like to just kind of stay in the dark until I see things
Sure.
that I love, and so I can't wait whenever you guys are able to get that to us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man.
My thanks to the great Adam Scott for that wonderful conversation. You can see all episodes of season 2 of Severance streaming now on Apple TV Plus. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you all next time.